Hi, Amy. So, I'm just doing this video to sort of help you understand a few things about neuroanatomy and the cells, the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, because obviously these are really confusing. And don't worry, this isn't extra work for me or anything. It's actually extra revision because I have to learn this anyway as well. So, why not help you at the same time? Also, if there's anything that you see in this video that you haven't learnt or that you're not learning, just ignore it because I obviously don't know what UQ is teaching you or if they're teaching you something different. So, yes, ignore anything. And I'm like 99% sure this information is correct. Otherwise, Adelaide Uni is teaching me the wrong stuff. So, let's go.
So, your nervous system microanatomy, which basically just means the cells of the nervous system. So, quick recap, we know that the central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is basically everything else. So, I just think of motor and sensory output or like conduction. So, in the central nervous system, about 10% of the microanatomy is made up of neurons, and these are your messengers, so they send signals through action potentials, and they cannot be reproduced. So, basically, what you've got is what you get. So, just to recap on neurons quickly and the structure of neurons, I'm not sure how much you've done on neurons before, how much they've covered, but if you want me to do a more in-depth video, I can. But basically, in the central nervous system, the neurons are the only ones that you have. And the general structure that you see are these like weird little jellyfish people. So you've got your dendrite, which I think of as the head, and this is where the messages are received. And then your axon, where the messages are sent. And the myelin that usually covers the neurons, which just basically insulates them and makes the messages go faster. And so Miss Rossiter used to always tell us axons speak and dendrites listen, and that's a really great way of remembering which way the action potential travels. And so if you sort of think of it, the more dendrites you have, obviously the more information you're going to be able to receive. And so that sort of helps me with remembering the different types of neurons, which I'll go into now. So the neurons I'll cover are unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar. So starting off with unipolar, these just look like your typical neurons, and they're just normally just very generic sensory neurons. Your bipolar are sort of the more complex sensory neurons. That's how I think of it anyway. So these are more like your five senses, so like olfactory neurons and retinal neurons for like sight, smell, also taste. And then your multipolar neurons have basically one axon, but heaps and heaps of dendrite heads, so they can receive heaps and heaps of messages. And these are typically found in your central nervous system. And if you think about it, it's quite logical because in the brain and spinal cord is where you're going to be receiving millions and millions of messages. And so these can also have a function in motor, but in general, they just are in the central nervous system for heaps and heaps of message receiving functions. So, what are the other 90% of the microanatomy, I hear you asking? These are your glial cells. These are awesome because they do a whole bunch of different kinds of things. They can support the neurons, they can insulate them, and they retain the ability to reproduce, which is pretty neat because we really need them to help our neurons function and just do a whole bunch of different things. So these are the four types of glial cells. And just to get your head around a few of them, for example, this is how you can see the oligodendrocytes and the astrocytes functioning with a neuron. So it's important to think of glial cells as like supportive cells for the neurons and the brain and everything else. So yes. So looking more specifically into the different kinds of glial cells that we can find in the brain and spinal cord. We've firstly got our ependymal cells, and these produce cerebrospinal fluid. Then we've got the microglia, which are basically your macrophages of the brain. So they mediate inflammation and they just survey the central nervous system to make sure there's no infection or anything. Your astrocytes are structural support, so they create the blood-brain barrier, and they maintain homeostasis as well. And then the oligodendrocytes, which are my favorite, produce myelin in the central nervous system. They basically myelinate the neurons, and one can myelinate up to 15 neurons, so it's pretty cool. And they repair and regenerate axons. So we love oligodendrocytes, but it's really important to remember that they're only in the central nervous system, because the peripheral nervous system have their own myelinating cells, which are the Schwann cells, which are also one of my favorites just because the name is awesome to say. Schwann. So your Schwann cells also make myelin, and they are really important for the regeneration of peripheral nerve fibers. And so one Schwann cell surrounds one neuron. So I think of it as friends, 1 to 1. So yes, I hope this was a little bit helpful for you. Maybe, I don't know. If not, just let me know if I can help you in any way. And don't worry, this isn't like extra work for me or anything. It's just fun procrastination. And it's helping me as well because I have to reteach myself a few things. And like I said, I have to know this anyway. Oh my gosh, I got an email. I'm so popular. Okay, well, yeah, hope this was helpful. Bye.